the electrons flow from the anode to the cathode. So that is how the flow of electrons through the circuit leads to generation of power. So what happens after some time? Now, once all the electrons flow from the anode to the cathode, there are no more electrons in the anode, and then the battery dies. Okay, and then you have to put a new battery, right? You would have seen after some time the battery stops working and the clock doesn't work or the torch doesn't light up. And then you just throw out the battery and put a new battery, and again this process repeats, right? So in a battery, we have the anode, the cathode. Flow of electrons from anode to cathode generates current, right? So now I'm going to come to redox reactions, okay? And after this, we'll take some questions. Okay, so redox, so in a battery, the reactions that are occurring come under the term redox reactions. Okay, so the word redox is actually a combination, it's a hybrid of two words, reduction and oxidation. Okay, so the red stands for reduction, it has nothing to do with the color red, by the way. Okay, so redox, the red part is reduction. Reduction is basically gain of electrons. Okay, and the ox is again oxidation. Again, it has nothing to do with ox. Okay, oxidation is loss of electrons, right? So in the battery we saw just now, what is happening? The anode is losing electrons, right? So the anode is getting oxidized. So electrons are flowing from the anode to the cathode. So the anode is getting oxidized and the cathode is getting reduced. The cathode is gaining electrons, so the cathode is getting reduced, right? So oxidation is nothing but loss of electrons and reduction is nothing but gain of electrons. Okay, so now one small activity I would like to do. Okay, so I would like you to meet my friend, the electron. Hi, so this is the electron. Okay, so now I'm going to do some magic. Okay, I'm just going to throw this electron. It's going to come right through your screen and you can catch it. Okay, no, I'm joking, it's not possible to do that, but let us do a small thought experiment. Okay, so just imagine that you and me are standing opposite to each other in a playground. Okay, so just imagine there's a playground and you are standing, and opposite to you I am standing. Okay, so I have this ball, I'm going to give a countdown and I'm just going to pretend to throw and you can catch it, right? Okay, 3, 2, 1, I'm throwing, catch it. You have caught it, right? So what has happened? You have caught the electron, so you have become reduced. I have lost the electron. Okay, so I have become oxidized. So when the electron is with me, I am reduced. When the electron I am throwing it to you, I have lost the electron. So I have become oxidized and you have become reduced. Okay, so same thing happens in a battery. The anode loses electrons and it is getting oxidized. The cathode gains electrons and it gets reduced, right? So I think I'll stop here now for some questions. If any one of you might have any questions.
Karthik, it was beautiful explanation. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we have some questions. Nehal will go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Sahil asks, can this flow be reversed?
Definitely, though. That's a fantastic question. So mobile phone. Okay. So mobile phone is there is a battery in the mobile phone, and then you just charge it when the charge is getting over, and it happens. So I'll just show my previous slide. Can I just switch off my chat box? It is a little distracting.
Yeah. Don't worry. We will read out the questions.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So normally the electrons flow from anode to the cathode. I don't know why this is misbehaving. Okay. So once all the electrons are in the cathode, the battery stops working, and then you charge the battery, and then the flow is reversed. So that is what happens in the mobile phone. So once your battery comes down to 5% or 10% and it's time for you to charge, basically when you provide electric current, the electrons again go back to the anode, right? And again you can use the mobile phone. The battery that you use in clock or something, torch, these kind of batteries are not rechargeable, so you have to discard them. But car batteries, mobile phone batteries, and several other batteries, they can be recharged and used again. So that's a very interesting question. Great.
Okay, so another question that I think I saw 2-3 times in the chat window is, do we produce electricity?
No, actually, human beings are not capable of producing electricity, as far as I know. But actually, there are certain bacteria in our gut, okay, in our gut, so in our digestive system, that can actually produce electrons, okay. So human beings as such, they can't produce electricity, but there are certain cells like neurons, okay, the cells which are present in brain, they can generate an action potential, they can generate a electrical potential, okay. But electricity as such, human beings can't produce. We can't touch our hand to a metal and electricity will flow. Nothing like that is there in humans.
Okay. So Pooja asks, do these electrons interact with each other?
Electrons, do they interact with each other? No, usually no, because like charges repel each other, right? Opposite charges attract. Like charges, so the electrons, as far as I know, they don't actually interact with each other. I'll have to go into physics. Actually, I'm not a physicist. I'm more of a microbiologist. As far as my limited knowledge goes, the electrons don't interact with each other. But if you want to study more about electricity, I think you'll have to ask a physicist. So from my limited knowledge, I don't think the electrons will actually interact because both of them have negative charges. The electrons have negative charges.
Okay, I think we can move ahead and then we'll come back to some questions in a few slides.
Yeah, sure. So moving ahead, I will come to electromicrobiology. But before that, I would like to ask a question. Why do we need oxygen? Okay. So the air we breathe, okay, it has oxygen and we can't survive without oxygen, right? So can anyone tell why do we need oxygen?
Yeah, lots of.
Everybody's saying to live, to breathe, for our survival.
Yes, to breathe, oxidation of food. Whoa, that is great. That is written by, I'm not able to read.
Allah.
Allah. Oh, that's the perfect answer.
These are all our young minds who've been coming for like a year now.
Yeah. So that's great. Okay. So basically we need oxygen to generate energy. Okay. So the food that we eat, okay, it contains carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals. I'm assuming all of you eat a balanced, nutritious diet and not some junk food. Otherwise, Dr. Karishma is actually a medical doctor. She'll take us to, okay?
Big assumption, Karthik. I haven't been able to implement this in my own house. Just if you noticed, what I was talking now was, what are we ordering for dinner tonight?
Okay. No. Okay. So let us assume that we eat a balanced diet. Okay. And the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, the chemicals that are present in the food. So once we take the food, they are actually oxidized. They are basically broken down into smaller constituents, into smaller compounds. And this usually happens by oxidation. There are different pathways, different metabolic pathways, which is not really required here. But what happens is, in general, the compounds are broken down into smaller units. And finally, the oxygen that we breathe, the electrons which are generated by oxygen, by oxidation, they are passed on to oxygen, and this generates energy, right? So the electrons that are obtained by oxidation are transferred to oxygen, and this generates energy. So this kind of metabolism where we need oxygen, right? It is called as aerobic metabolism. Aerobic, anything which needs oxygen. But there are certain bacteria, the electrogenic bacteria, they don't need oxygen. They survive under anaerobic conditions. Any environment that does not have oxygen is an anaerobic environment. Okay. And in fact, oxygen is a poison to these kind of bacteria. Oxygen can actually kill anaerobic bacteria. So oxygen is a poisonous gas to them. So where do these bacteria transfer the electrons? So if they generate electrons, they are basically transferred to an electrode. Okay. So the bacteria, electrogenic bacteria, after they oxidize the food that is given to them, they generate electrons and transfer them to an electrode to generate current. Now, there are two main electrogenic bacteria which are very prominently used in electromicrobiology, and their names are Shewanella and Geobacter. Okay, they are scientific names. By the way, do you know our scientific name is Homo sapiens, right? So the electrogenic bacteria which are very commonly used in labs are Shewanella and Geobacter. Now coming to the biobattery, okay, it is called as a microbial fuel cell. Okay, so fuel cell is nothing but a battery, and since it uses microorganisms, it is called as microbial fuel cell. So microbial fuel cell also has an anode chamber and a cathode chamber, and the anode and the cathode are the electrodes which are present in each of the two chambers. In the anode chamber, we introduce bacteria. Okay, so this is just a bacterial representation for a bacteria, and we provide food to the bacteria. Just like we eat food, the bacteria also need food, and that is provided in the form of a nutrient medium. Okay, so we provide nutrient medium containing different glucose, minerals, vitamins, all these things, and the bacteria oxidize the nutrients. Oxidation, remember we saw it a few slides ago, loss of electrons. So once the bacteria oxidize the nutrients, the electrons are transferred to the electrode, right? And they flow through a circuit to generate electricity. So this is how a biobattery works, right? But you would have guessed by now, the power that is generated in a microbial fuel cell is much, much lesser than what is generated in a chemical fuel cell, okay? Microbial fuel cells usually generate power in milliwatts, okay? The LED bulbs that are there in our houses, okay, they are maybe 10, 12, 18 watts or something, 20 watts, 50 watts. But in the microbial fuel cell, it generates in milliwatts, the power that is generated. So it is very small. However, by combining several fuel cells together, you can boost the power. Okay. So this is how a microbial fuel cell works. So instead of chemicals that are present, we have the microbes that are actually oxidizing. They are acting as catalysts, and the microbes oxidize the nutrients and generate electrons, which flow in a circuit. So that is how a microbial fuel cell works. Now, how do microbes transfer electrons to the electrode? So in our case, oxygen that we breathe, it is going inside our body. So it is going inside our respiratory cells in our lungs. But what about bacteria? So the bacteria are transferring electrons outside their cell. Okay, so it is called as extracellular electron transfer. So they are transferring electrons to the electrode, right? So it is called as extracellular. Anything that happens outside its cell, it is called as extracellular. So in our home, you would have seen wires, right, through which electricity flows. Of course, many of us have concealed wiring in that homes, but basically the current comes through wires in our home. So the bacteria also have wires, and they are called as nanowires. Okay, so this is really nice, right? So the bacteria have certain wires which are called as nanowires. They come from the outer membrane of the bacteria, and they are basically filament-like structures. And these nanowires, they just establish contact with the electrode, and then they transfer electrons. Okay, so they just make a contact with the electrode, and they just transfer electrons. Then there are certain structures called as cytochromes. Okay, so cytochromes are basically proteins. So last week, I think you had a session on proteins, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So last week you had a session on proteins. So cytochromes are basically redox proteins. Okay, so they can undergo, they contain iron in them, and they can there's a component called as heme, okay, which contains iron, and these proteins can accept electrons and give the electrons to the electrode. So the cytochromes can also directly transfer electrons to the electrode. And there is something called as a redox mediator. Okay, so the redox mediator, what it does, the bacteria basically secretes a chemical. Okay, so this chemical can actually take electrons from the microbe. So it is getting reduced, and after it gets reduced, it transfers the electrons to the electrode and gets oxidized. And again, one more cycle it will. So the what the mediator does, it takes electrons from the microbe and passes it on to the electrode. So that is what it does. So it is called as a redox mediator. It is a redox mediator because it can get oxidized and reduced. It can undergo oxidation and reduction. That's why it's redox mediator. So these are some of the mechanisms by which electron transfer happens. Now, so this is actually the electron microscope image. Electron microscope is a very high resolution microscope. And you can see the bacterium here, and this filament-like thing you can see here, right? So this is actually the nanowire. So this is from a bacteria called as Geobacter, okay? And so this filament-like thing is the nanowire by which it can transfer electrons. So this is the electron microscope image. So that's it. So
fascinating. Karthik, shall we take questions?
yeah, sure.
Lots of questions, Karthik. It's so
Yes.
fascinating, right, Snehal?
Yeah.
Yes, lots of really good questions. So I think the first question was, how much of electricity can these microbial cells produce?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the amount of electricity is quite small because they are bacteria, right? So so if you take in our home, if you take the LED bulb, so the LED bulbs, if we take, they are usually 10 watts, 12 watts, or 18 watts. So the bacteria, they produce current in milliwatts, not watts. So milliwatts. It's much lesser than what we see. So, but to increase the electricity production, they combine multiple microbial fuel cells, and then the current production increases. So I will be speaking about it in the applications, and then I will give more information on this.
Sounds good.
Okay. So another question is, do the microbes die inside the cell eventually?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. So microbes, actually, they are very unique creatures, okay? So microbes basically reproduce just by division. So there is one microbe. So what it does, it divides into two, and each of those two divides. So 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 16. So as long as you keep providing nutrients, the bacteria will keep dividing and producing more cells. The moment you stop providing nutrient medium, the bacteria will start dying, and eventually no current will be produced. So as long you have to keep providing nutrient medium for electricity generation to happen. So that is one advantage. So a chemical battery, how long it will last? Maybe 1 month, let us say, in a wall clock or something. So microbial fuel cell, it can keep running for months or even years, as long as you keep giving the nutrients.
So this is an advantage, even though it's milliwatts production and you need multiple fuel cells to produce wattage, but you can replenish them. So it's like a reusable, sustainable, recyclable, all the good stuff.
Definitely. Definitely.
Somehow, Snehal, this season has morphed into like a environmental season with a lot of recycle. So thank you, Karthik.
Yes.
Karthik, Ala has a question.
Okay.
I think it's, do algae and fungi also produce this phenomenon of bacteria, like microelectricity? Do algae and fungi also do this?
Usually bacteria are more commonly used.
Okay.
The algae and fungi, they have thick cell walls, right?
Right.
So it is little difficult to use them. But there are some photosynthetic algae which have been used.
Okay.
Like chlorella. So there is an organism called as chlorella, okay, which is photosynthetic. So this can actually be used this has been used in microbial fuel cells. But if you want a better performance, bacteria are the people to
do. Oh yeah, we agree. Bacteria are our favorite, right?
Okay. So maybe we'll take 2 more questions before we move ahead. The first question was very nice. The question is, what are these nanowires on the microbe? Are they actually protein? Are they some proteins?
Oh, that is perfect. You have given the answer. So the nanowires are actually proteins. Okay. So the nanowires also contain certain ion compounds. Okay. So they are actually, by which they can transfer electrons to the N. Actually, I will tell you one small interesting thing. So there is recently some new bacteria was discovered called cable bacteria. Okay, cable bacteria. So the structure of cable bacteria is just like a cable. It is long and filamentous. Okay. So this cable bacteria can transfer electrons in centimeter distances. That is great, actually. So so I'll just give an analogy. So if we take a ball, okay, so my favorite ball, and how far can we throw it? Okay, maybe meters, 100 meters. Okay. But we can't throw beyond a certain distance. Cable bacteria are in micrometers, microorganisms, right? So bacteria are very small, but they can transfer the electrons in centimeter distances. So that is really wonderful. So they can transfer electrons across a long range. Okay.
That sounds fascinating. That sounds like a bacteria training for the Olympics.
Actually, yes.
Yes,
Actually,
right?
yes. They are participating in bacterial Olympics.
Pretty much. So many multiple times their body length.
Yeah, multiple times their body length. And not several multiple times, from micro scale to the centimeter scale.
Exactly. So, wow.
Okay, so we have one more question from Ananya, which I think is a really great question. The question is, how do you see all of this happening? Like, how do you know all of this is happening in a microbial cell? Do you use a microscope, or how do you observe all of this?
So that is again a very interesting question. So in a microbial fuel cell, what we do is, so we can see the electrodes. So the electrodes are quite big. And so the bacteria, what we do is, once we add bacteria in the anode chamber, they grow. So there are certain techniques that we use to see. First is, there is an instrument called a spectrophotometer by which you can see the turbidity. Okay. So if the bacteria are growing, the solution color changes slightly. It becomes more turbid. Before you add the bacteria, the solution is clear. Okay. It's very transparent. But as the bacteria are growing, the turbidity increases. So the less, so you can measure it in spectrophotometer. Another method is, we are basically interested in current, right? So to measure current, there are many devices. So there is a multimeter. You can just connect a multimeter, and the multimeter will give you the current readings. Okay. So if you use a computer, so the computer will automatically tell you how much current is being produced. So more the number of bacteria, more the current levels. So that is another.
Like bacterial growth or the output, which is the current.
Correct.
So this is like a great toolkit to do home experimentation. Great. I think still there's a last question we can combine. Pallav, Kaku's and Ala's question. What nutrient medium you use, and how do you replenish the nutrient medium?
Yes. So what nutrient medium you use? So there are different nutrient mediums. So these nutrient mediums are named in different ways. So there is one nutrient medium called as M1 medium, M1. Okay. So this basically contains, so there are nutrient medium basically contains sugars and vitamins and minerals. Okay. So just like our food, we also need carbohydrates. Rice has nothing but starch, is basically glucose. So if you take dal, it contains proteins. Okay. Vitamins. Okay. They are also present in many of the foods. So for bacterial nutrient medium, you give a sugar. So for electrogenic bacteria, we give a sugar called as lactose. So we give lactose as the sugar, and there is a long list of minerals. They are basically different chemicals. Okay. So we just weigh the chemicals using a weighing balance and make a nutrient medium, sterilize the nutrient medium, and just add the nutrient medium in the microbial fuel cell. So there is an instrument called as pipette. Okay, it's a small device by which you just measure certain volume, 5 ml, 10 ml, how much ever, and just add it in the cell.
Oh, nice. Nice. And you can refuel like the anode part.
And you can keep refueling it.
Okay, cool.
So as and when the current output is reducing, you can just spike it up with nutrient medium, and then the bacteria will increase. So.
Perfect. And Karthik, a perfect question to segue into the latter part of your talk. Anushka asks, can we harvest this electricity produced by bacteria?
I will come to that right.
Yes. You see, Karthik, they know the flow of the talk also now.
I am actually feeling we should get these kids and have them as our mentors actually. Yeah. Because the ideas that they are generating.
Yes, exactly.
The ideas that they are generating, the questions that they are asking, they are actually the way our supervisors ask us.
Very much. So we are on the job. We are getting real-time training to be scientists.
I am wondering whether they are conducting our interview through this channel, through this platform.
You never know. You never know. Our central agencies might outsource One skill
Right, right.
step to talk to a scientist. Well done, guys. Well done. So great.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karthik. Go ahead.
So I'll come on to the applications part. Okay. So though the power produced is very less, there are many useful applications these systems give. So the first biggest application is wastewater treatment. Now, wastewater contains several organic compounds. Okay. And these wastes are nothing but they can act as fuel. Okay. So these wastes can act as fuel and the wastes can be oxidized by bacteria. So what happens if you use wastewater in a microbial fuel cell? The bacteria will oxidize the wastes and the water will be purified and electricity will be generated simultaneously. So you get two objectives. One is electricity generation and wastewater treatment. So this is actually a picture of microbial fuel cells. There are multiple microbial fuel cells which are stacked, and this was used for treating 1,000 liters of wastewater. Okay, so 1,000 liters is not a huge amount, though 1,000 liters, the word is huge. If you just listen to the word 1,000 liters, it appears huge. But in terms of wastewater treatment, it is nothing. But this is a beginning. So this was done in Switzerland. So what they did was they constructed a wastewater treatment system using microbial fuel cells, and they computers were used to monitor the treatment process. And the wastewater was provided to each of the microbial fuel cell, and the electricity generated was used to run the computer itself. So it was a self-sustaining system. So this was in Switzerland. So wastewater treatment is one big application. And another important, interesting application is this. So one mobile phone was charged using microbial fuel cell. So this is actually a path breaking. I will tell you how. So these yellow things that you see here are actually microbial fuel cells. They constructed several microbial fuel cells and they used urine, okay, human urine as the fuel. And the electricity that was generated was used to charge this Samsung phone. Okay, of course, the charging is not like what we have for in our mobiles. Okay, if you just connect the charger nowadays, in 2 hours the phone gets charged fully. But this takes microbial fuel cell takes a long time, 10 to 12 hours it takes. But even then, you don't need electricity, a separate electric source. You just by wastes, if you are able to just light a bulb or charge a phone, just imagine the revolution that can happen in energy technology.
Exactly.
This is how it starts. This is how it starts. Any technology starts slowly, and with more and more research, automatically improvements take place and improvisations take place. If you see the mobile phone right now, everyone is used to a smartphone. But when I was growing up, there was no smartphone. We used landlines. Okay, many of you will not even be knowing. But now just see, and when the first smartphone came, it was very heavy and there were no apps or games or nothing. Just call, that's it. And at the most send a SMS. But now you have iPhones and whatnot, and you can do so many things with a smartphone.
Karthik, now Pepperfry sells landlines as home decor items. Like antique pieces. This was a phone connected to a plug. You can keep it here and show it like that. Like gramophones वगैरह होते हैं ना, antique pieces.
Right. But that was our main way of communication back then, right? So that was the way we used to speak to everyone. So and there was no mobile games or whatever. Right now, people are playing games and ordering food and whatnot. So many apps are there, and you can do anything with a phone nowadays. But this is how technology develops. And yeah, so this is the next application. So in IIT Kharagpur, it's in West Bengal. Okay, so they developed a bioelectric toilet. So the human waste was collected in a tank, and they developed a huge microbial fuel cell with large electrodes. And this microbial fuel cell was treating human waste, and it was used, the electricity generated was used to light the toilet premises. So this was again a self-sustaining technology that was developed in IIT Kharagpur. Professor Makarand Ghangrekar has worked on this technology, And this is again really fantastic application. So they have again stacked. So here you can see, right, stacked MFC. So they have stacked several units together, and this was treating human waste very effectively and generating electricity. So another application is biosensing. Okay, so any sensor. So in many of your homes, your parents might be having the sugar monitoring machine. Okay, to just see the levels of glucose. Okay, as this is useful for diabetic patients. That is basically a sensor. So it tells you you just add a drop of blood. Okay, and then it tells you the reading. Okay, the glucose levels it tells you. So that is basically sensing glucose in the blood. Okay, so in microbial fuel cells, they can actually tell you how much contamination is present in water. Okay, so it is very simple. If the water contains very toxic materials, okay, which can kill the bacteria, the current production will reduce. Okay, if you give normal nutrients, okay, a stable electricity will be generated. However, if the water contains lot of toxic substances, it actually kills the bacteria. And if it kills the bacteria, electricity will not be produced. So the electricity level can actually correlate with the concentration of the toxic chemical. And you can actually use this to sense whether the water is polluted or not. So you can sense toxic metals or pesticides and so many other things which are harmful. Okay, so this is a very efficient way to detect the extent of pollution in water. And there are some other applications also. So this is a deep sea probe. So in deep sea probes, basically they are used to measure water. They are used to monitor water quality parameters in oceans. Okay, the pressure, the temperature, and salinity, and so many other things. So deep sea probes, once they are in the bottom of the ocean, it is very difficult to have maintenance work carried out to them because it's not possible. And batteries, if you use chemical batteries run out after a period of time. But in the ocean sediments, there are a lot of electrogenic bacteria, and they can keep powering these deep sea probes for a long duration. So there is no need to use chemical batteries or anything. Just with microbial fuel cells, they can power deep sea probes. And you can also recover metals from industrial effluents. So a lot of industries, when they discharge their effluents, it has lots and lots of metals, heavy, and these metals are actually very toxic if they are discharged in lakes or rivers. It poses a great harm to life. So if you use the metals in the cathode, they get reduced and they get precipitated. So here, this reddish brown thing is actually iron, which is getting deposited. So this was used in microbial fuel cell. Industrial wastewater was used in microbial fuel cell, and they were able to recover iron. Okay, and that water was purified. So if that purified water, it does not contain metals. So that you can discharge it in a safe way. That will not have any heavy metals. And this bluish green thing is basically copper. Okay, so this copper was also recovered from industrial effluents. So you can use this to recover many metals. So this is another interesting application. And so yeah, this is a gastronome. This is basically a robot. Okay, so this was powered using food waste. So food wastes were given. So this is the microbial fuel cell, and the food wastes were actually digested, and electricity was generated, and that was used to power this train kind of thing. Okay, it was charging nickel batteries. So this is another interesting thing. So the main applications are basically bioremediation, wastewater treatment, biosensing. Okay, and gradually this technology is making leaps and bounds. So in a few years time, who knows, our homes might be powered with microbial fuel cells. Okay, and the wastewater that is generated in our kitchen, if we are able to use the same wastewater and we can generate electricity, imagine what a revolutionary technology it might be. Okay,
absolutely.
There are different bioelectrochemical devices. Okay, I have told you about microbial fuel cell, which converts wastes to electricity. Then there is another cell, which is the 3 electrode cell. Okay, so this is used for studying microbial electron transfer, fundamental studies. Okay, how do the microbes behave? How do they actually behave when you give them nutrient medium? When you give different nutrient medium, what happens? How do they transfer electrons to the electrode? So there, this is used for these kind of studies. Then there is a microbial electrolysis cell. So electrolysis, okay, lysis means splitting, electro relating to electricity. So a microbial electrolysis cell can split water and generate hydrogen. So it can be used for hydrogen production. Okay, and hydrogen is a very valuable fuel. Then there is the microbial solar cell. Okay, everyone would have heard about solar devices. Okay, solar cells, they convert energy from the sun's rays. Okay, so in microbial solar cell, energy is generated using photosynthetic microbes and electrogenic microbes, a combination of. And then there is the microbial electrosynthesis cell. So this generates chemicals. Okay, so if you apply a voltage to the bacteria, if you just give a potential, the bacteria can generate several different chemicals. They can generate acids, they can generate several chemicals, which is used in industries. Okay, so these are some of the different bioelectrochemical systems. And you just look at this field, it is a multidisciplinary field. Okay, you need to understand microbiology if you are working with bacteria. You need to study electrochemistry to understand the mechanisms of electron transfer. Okay, then there is material science. Okay, in material science, what they do is they study the properties of electrodes. Okay, so how can the electrode be engineered, okay, to increase biofilm formation and to make it more cost effective. So these kind of things. And then there is the engineering aspect where you look at the design of the reactor. How small should it be? How big should it be? What should be its configuration? Okay. And then of course, it has a lot of relevance in energy and environment, right? Because it can generate electricity and it can be used for wastewater treatment. Okay, so these are some of the different fields that are involved, and it's a multidisciplinary field, right?
Very much.
So that comes to the, I'll come to the summary, what we have learned today. Okay, so bioelectrochemical systems, they convert chemical energy present in wastes to electricity. Okay, and they use electrogenic bacteria as catalysts. Now, bacteria use different modes of electron transfer. We have seen, right? Through cytochromes, through nanowires, through redox mediator. Okay, and there are several useful applications, right? And they can actually help in creating a sustainable world. So this technology is very recent technology. So this century only it started becoming into a research started happening only in this century. So this was not an established field like some of the other fields we have. Like for example, physics, you know, Newton has discovered it centuries back, the law of gravitation and all. But this field is relatively new and it is still emerging, and a lot of research is actively happening in different parts of the world, right? So this brings to money. And I would like to share two small stories, right? So which means small beginnings lead to great things. Okay, so you have, I'm sure everyone knows this person, okay, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, so there is a very interesting story. Dr. Abdul Kalam, when he was young, he actually came from a very humble background from Tamil Nadu, and his teacher was Shiva Subramanya Iyer, and he was one day in class, he was explaining about birds, okay, how birds fly, and he was explaining the mechanism, and he actually took the whole class to a seashore, and he explained very beautifully how the birds are able to fly and what is the mechanism that enables them to fly. And this actually triggered the interest of Dr. Abdul Kalam, and this incident acted as a trigger, and he was very much interested in aeronautics. And in college, when he joined the Madras Institute of Technology, he took aeronautical engineering. And he eventually became the missile man of India. So he has done a lot of contributions to our country, right? So actually, but if you see his interest, so it started from a classroom when his teacher explained to him about birds, right? And I'm sure everyone will be knowing this man also. Okay, Dr. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientists ever, right? So Albert Einstein also, when he was small, when he was just your age, around 5 to 6 years, his father gave him a compass, a magnetic compass, and he was very much fascinated by it. No wonder which direction you turn, the needle always points north. Okay, so Albert Einstein thought there seems to be a mysterious force which is at play here, and that actually triggered his interest into science, and we all know what he went on to achieve. So you might also be interested in several things. Keep thinking about it, keep discussing it with your teachers, friends, family, anyone. Okay, who knows, several of you might go on to become great scientists. Okay, one of you might get the Nobel Prize, many of you might contribute to our country. So any field that you're interested in, keep be curious, ask questions, discuss, have an open mind. You never know where your interest might lead you to somewhere great in the future, right?
Absolutely. Beautiful message. Beautiful message, Karthik. Beautiful message. I think be curious is the takeaway.
Be curious, be open.
Be open. Ask questions, seek answers, all of that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't matter which field you're interested in. Okay.
Yes.
Any field is fine. Just act on your interests. Okay. That is what will take you to great heights, and that will also contribute to our country.
Very much. Karthik, lots of questions. Snehal, Karthik, we should get one by one at them now.
Yes. So I think Adrit had a question. He says, what do bacteria get by producing this electricity, or why do they produce electricity? Is it beneficial to them?
Fantastic question. So why do they need to produce electricity when they can just laze around, right? Yeah. So see, like I said, okay, we breathe oxygen. Why? To generate energy. So the bacteria also need to transfer the electron. The electrons are generated in their metabolism, and they have to transfer the electrons for them to survive. If they just keep on accumulating electrons, it's going to kill them. So they transfer electrons to the electrode. Okay, that's why the electricity is produced. So there are certain bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, which transfer electrons to some chemicals. For example, there is a chemical called as sulfate. There is another chemical called as nitrate. So these nitrates and sulfates, they are used by bacteria to transfer the electrons as part of their energy generating process. In a microbial fuel cell, instead of nitrates or sulfates, we use the electrode. Okay?
Right.
So that is what happens. So these electrogenic bacteria, they generate electrons as a survival strategy. Okay, for their respiration. It is generated as part of their respiration.
And Snehal, Karthik, you mentioned something about using urine for generation, and as expected, all our young minds got a little hung up on that. So we can revisit that. Anushka says when they saw fresh urine, they all went, ew. So what was urine doing in that situation? Let's just get it out of their heads. They are stuck on that.
Could you repeat
this slide? Yeah. This slide, I think they saw fresh urine labeled on the tube.
It was earlier, Karthik. Earlier.
This one.
Yeah. So when you said about this Samsung powered phone was recharged using urine.
Oh, yes. No. I think it was the next slide after this, where those tubes are, where the metals were extracted.
No, this is not.
So it says fresh urine on the.
No, label. This is not urine actually. So this is what? This experiment. What was done was they used urine in the anode chamber, and bacteria used the urine as fuel.
Okay.
So the bacteria used the urine as fuel, and in the cathode chamber of that same device, what happened was the ion got precipitated. So this was from urine. So this is, here you can see a catholyte, here you can see anolyte, here you can see deionized water, right? So they were different materials that were given to bacteria, and they reduced iron. So this is not actually urine as such. So urine was used as fuel in the microbial foods.
Okay, that's what we all got hung up on. Because urine actually, guys, is very rich in protein,
Yes. So urine contains lot of nitrogenous compounds.
Right. Nitrogenous compounds. Correct.
And
Protein breakdown actually.
Right. So they can actually act as fuel to bacteria, and bacteria can actually generate electricity from it.
Wonderful. Okay, so we got that. Nothing is really waste. Now in the context
Nothing is really waste is also useful in several ways.
Absolutely. That's true. Ala says she's currently holding one job, which is interviewing scientists for positions at government institutes, which is wonderful. Thank you, Ala, for your service. Let's move on. Aditi asks Snehal and Karthik, can we use fuel cells to purify the ocean? Is this possible? Like in oil spills, ship waste and all, oil spills, can fuel cells potentially be used to clean up oceans?
That's a very interesting idea. So oil spills, they don't use fuel cells as such. They basically what they do is they introduce certain bacteria that can use oil as nutrient. So that is what they do. So fuel cell may not help in that case, because the purpose of fuel cell is to generate electricity. We don't need to generate electricity. We just need to clean up the oil. So to clean up the oil, they directly introduce certain bacteria which can eat up the oil, and sometimes they use certain materials which soak up the oil. So they use these kind of things.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So that's what they do.
All right. We can just quickly look at a few more questions.
Okay. So Sahil asks, what is the effect of all of this on our environment? Are there any like side effects or bad effects of any of these?
No, this is actually a very good technology, because what it does is it does not generate waste in any form. So if you take, let us say, your motor car or your bike or whatever, it uses petrol as fuel, and it basically gives a lot of pollutants into the atmosphere. But if you take a fuel cell, microbial fuel cell, it is using the waste and it is generating electricity. So there is nothing harmful that is being generated. So it is actually a very sustainable technology.
Very much. And so critically interspersed with our lives. If you want clean hygiene, sanitation, environment, sustainable living, very much.
Okay, so I think Ala has another very nice question. Ala asks, can the bacteria that produce this electricity, do they use this electricity as a form of defense?
Oh, that's very interesting. That is a fantastic question, frankly. So as far as I know, as far as I know, they don't use it for defense, but there is a interesting feature in bacteria. So it is called as direct interspecies electron transfer, DIET, D-I-E-T. So in this direct interspecies electron transfer, what they do is they transfer electrons from one bacterium to another bacterium. So a bacterium transfers its electrons to another bacterium in a biofilm. Okay, so it's something like a biofilm is basically aggregation of microbes. It's a bacterial community. Okay, so none of us live alone in our homes, right? We have family, we have a colony, a society, and a country, and the world, which is actually one huge community. And we are all dependent on each other for various things. So the bacteria in a microbial fuel cell, they don't use it as a form of defense, as far as I know, but they use the electrons to do something beneficial, to actually survive toxic conditions or to generate chemicals, something like that. But this is a very interesting question, and who knows? From my knowledge, I have not come across using electricity as a form of defense for bacteria at least. But this is a very interesting question.
Very interesting, really. Because if you think of what it could do to the macrophage or the neutrophil in its vicinity, especially when it's a cluster of bacteria, it's really interesting to think of it.
You have actually given a research problem on which...
yes. On which, like, I mean, it's a fundable grant.
No, I think next time when we are writing grants or doing PhD, we should catch these people and ask them for ideas.
Yes. Karthik, they might start charging us for their time though. So we'll have to work around that. Wonderful. Wonderful. Pooja asks, can bacteria use alcohol to produce electricity? And
yes, definitely. So they have used alcohols, but the only thing is, not all bacteria can use alcohol. There are only certain species that can use alcohols, but alcohol has been used in microbial fuel cells to generate electricity. Yes, alcohols can be used.
Wonderful. Look at the questions. Karthik, it really reflects the quality of your engagement also, because you went through it so systematically and clearly that they have been able to come up with such questions. They have actually understood what you are saying. So brilliant session, brilliant. It's 5:57. Snehal will have some trivia, and then we want to say thank you to you.
Yes.
And
okay. Before that, can I just add one or two small things?
Please.
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to acknowledge certain people who have helped me be here where I am currently. Okay. Firstly, I would like to thank you. That is our young audience. Without you, there would be no such program. Okay. And your enthusiasm is what makes us enthusiastic. Then I would like to thank the fantastic organizers of this program, Dr. Snehal Kadam and Dr. Karishma Kaushik. Okay, hats off to you for even conceiving such a program and giving a platform for us to be part of this. It can actually encourage, and who knows, this can be a stepping stone to something big in the future. I would like to thank my parents and my teachers for inspiring me and encouraging me. There are two people I would like to specifically mention. They are my PhD guide, Dr. B.S. Vijay Kumar, and my current research supervisor, Professor Lucinda Doyle in IIT Delhi.
Very generous of you. Thank you for sharing your time and passion.